Hi everybody, welcome to Live Blogger. In this video I'll show you how to design this sidebar using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So this is how it looks. We can see that we have these menus over here, and when we hover over this we have this hover effect, and then we have this button over here to expand this menu bar, and if I click on that we have the sidebar displayed over here, and we have the labels also displayed over here. And if I click on this button once again, it goes back to this simplified view. So this is what we're going to design in this video. Let's get started. Right here I have opened up this folder called Sidebar, and I opened it with VS Code. So let's start by creating our necessary files. So let's click on new file, and we'll just create an index.html file. And let's create a CSS file. So let's click on new file, and I'll just type style.css. And we also need to have a JavaScript file. So let's type main.js. Now let's start with the index.html file. So here in VS Code you have this shortcut where you can just press exclamation and press tab, and you'll have this basic HTML5 code. And here I'll just link our CSS file. So I'll just type link and press tab, and here in the href I'll just type style.css. And we'll also link our JavaScript file over here. So I'll just type script:/src and press tab. And here in the src I'll just type main.js. Right, now let's start with the markup of our sidebar. Now we'll create a division with the class of sidebar container to hold everything. So let's create a division. So I'll just type sidebar container. And in that the first thing we need to have is this button right here. So for that let's create a division with the class of details button. And in this details button we need to have an icon. So for that we're going to use font awesome icons. For that let's go ahead and get the CDN of font awesome, and you can just search for font awesome 5 CDN and you'll find this link of cdnjs.com. So let's go to the website, and let's click on this all.min.css file, and let's click on this copy link tag, and I'll just paste it inside the head tag over here. And now let's go to fontawesome.com website, and let's get the icon. So the icon that we need is this right arrow. So let's type right, and let's scroll down, and here we can see we have this icon called angle right. So let's click on that, and this is the code for the icon. So let's copy this, and let's paste it over here inside this division. Now let's open this in our browser, and let's see whether everything is being displayed correctly. So I have this extension called live server installed in VS Code. So you can go ahead and search for live server and install it in VS Code. And once you do that, you can just right click over here in the HTML and click on open with live server. And now here we can see the icon is displayed over here in the browser. Alright, now the next thing we need to have are these menu items. So for that we'll create a division with the class of menu items. So here I'll just type .menu items and press tab. And in that we will have an anchor tag, and for that we will give it a class of menu item. And for the href I'll just type hash for now. And now inside this anchor tag we need to have the icon. So let's go back to our font awesome, and let's search for the first icon, which is home. So here I'll just go to icons, and let's search for home, and here we can see the icon. So let's click on that, and let's click on this code to copy it, and I'll just paste it over here inside the anchor tag. And let's go back to our website, and here we can see the icon is displayed over here. Right, now the next thing we need to have is the text. So if you go back to our design, and if I click on this button, we can see we have this text over here at the right. So we want to have the text for all of these menu items. So let's go back, and here we'll create a span with a class of details, and in that I'll just type home for this menu item. And now let's copy this anchor tag, and I'll just paste it 3 more times. And now for the second menu item we have an icon called FA adjust, and here we'll just type adjust as the keyword. And then for the next menu item we have an icon called FA at, and here I'll just type email. And the last icon is COG, and here I'll just type options. Alright, that's it with the HTML of our design. Now let's go to our CSS and let's start styling this. So first of all let's target the body, and I'll just set a margin of 0 for everything. Now let's style the sidebar container division. So in our HTML we can see we have this division with the class of sidebar container. So let's style that. So here I'll just type .sidebar container, and we'll set a background color of 091116, and we'll set the position to fixed, and we'll set the left position to 0 and the top position to 0, and we want the height to be 100 viewport height, and we will set a width of 80 pixels, and let's also add a box shadow of 4 pixels, 0, 24 pixels, negative 8 pixels, and RGBA 0, 0, 0, and 0.3. Alright, now let's style all of these icons. So for the icons, we have a tag called I. So here we can see we have this I tag, and in that we have these classes which gives us these icons. So let's target all the I tags. So here let's type sidebar container I, and we will set the color of all of these icons to light gray, and let's set the font size of these icons to 30 pixels. Now let's style the container of these menu items. So if you go back to our HTML, we can see that we have this division with the class of menu items, and in that we have all these anchor tags with the class of menu item. So let's target this menu items division. So let's go back, and here let's type sidebar container menu items, and we will set the display to flex, and we will set the flex direction to column. And now we want to bring everything to the center vertically. So for that we have to type justify content and set it to center, and we also have to set the height to 100 viewport height. And now we can see that all these menu items are in the center. Now for all these menu items we will have a gap of 42 pixels. So for that we can just type gap and 42 pixels. Alright, now let's style all the anchor tags with the class menu item. So let's type sidebar container menu item, and we'll set the display to flex, and here we can see we have this icon and also this text over here. Now we want both of them to be center aligned, so for that you can just type align items to the center, and let's also remove the underlines from the links. So I'll just type text decoration and set it to none, and we'll also set the color of the text to white, and let's set the font family to Roboto, and we'll also add a padding of 6 pixels top and bottom, and 16 pixels left and right. Now let's style this text inside the menu item. So if you go back to our HTML, we can see that we have a span with the class of details. So let's target this. So here I'll just type sidebar container menu item and details, and for the details we will have a margin left of 24 pixels, and we will set the font size to 18 pixels. Now let's add a hover effect to these icons. So the icons are basically I tags. So for that let's type sidebar container menu item I, and when we hover over this we will increase the size a little bit. So let's type transform, and let's set a scale of 1.2, and we'll also add a background color, and let's set it to 0f1d25. And now if we hover over this we can see that the size is changing. Now we'll also add some padding to these icons so that we can see the background color clearly. So let's type sidebar container menu item I, and let's set a padding of 8 pixels, and we'll also set a border radius of 8 pixels, and we'll also set a transition so that we will have smooth animation. So we'll set the transition of all to 300 milliseconds ease. Right now let's hover over this, and we can see that we have the background color displayed, and also the size is changing. And now if you hover over this area we can see that we can still click on the links over here. So we have to disable that when we are on this mode. So let's go to the details. So here in the details I'll just set the pointer events, and I'll just set it to none. And now if you hover over this area we cannot click on the link. And let's also set the opacity to 0 when we are on this mode right here. And when we are on the extended mode we will set the opacity back to 1. Now let's style this details button over here. So if you go back to our HTML, here we can see we have given it a class of details btn. So let's target that. Here I'll just type sidebar container details btn, and let's set the position to absolute. So this will be positioned relative to this container, which is the sidebar container. And now let's set the right position to negative 10 pixels, and let's set the top position to 24 pixels. Now let's add a background color of 2A9D8F, and let's set the height and the width to 32 pixels, and let's set a border radius of 50%. so that we have this round shape. I will also bring this icon to the center. So for that, let's type display of flex, and let's set the align items to the center and justify content to the center. And now when we hover over this, we need to have the cursor set to pointer. So let's type cursor and pointer, and now we can see we have the pointer. Let's also decrease the font size a little bit. So let's type sidebar container details button I, because the icons are inside the I tag. So let's set the font size to 20 pixels. Alright, now the next thing we will do is we will style the extended state. So we're going to add a class called active to the sidebar container, and when we have the active class, we're going to increase the width of this sidebar. So let's type sidebar container dot active, and let's set the width to 200 pixels. And now let's go back to our index.html file, and here in the sidebar container we'll also add a class of active. And now we can see we have a width of 200 pixels when we add the class active. Now let's go back to our style.css file, and here we'll also add a transition so that we will have smooth animation. So just type transition of all to 500 milliseconds ease. Now when we have the active class, we'll also rotate this button 180 degrees. So let's type sidebar container dot active, and in that we have the details button. So let's type details btn, and let's type transform rotate z, and we'll set it to 180 degrees. And now we can see that it is rotated when we have the active class. And now we also want to display the text when we have the active class. So let's scroll down, and here we can see for the details we have set the opacity to 0. So let's type sidebar container dot active menu item details, and let's set the opacity back to 1, and we'll also set the pointer events to auto so that we'll be able to click on it. And he will also add a transition so that we'll have smooth animation. So let's type transition and all to 300 milliseconds ease. And now when we hover over this, we will have a background color. So for that, let's add a hover effect to this menu item. So I'll just type sidebar container menu item colon hover, and let's add a background color of 0f1d25, and he will also add a transition for smooth animation. And now let's hover over this, and we can see that we have the hover effect. So everything is working alright. Now the last thing we need to do is when we click on this button, we need to display this text, and when we click on this button once again, we want to hide this text. So for that, we can simply add and remove the active class to the sidebar container. So let's do that in our JavaScript file. So we need to access the sidebar container and also this details button in our JavaScript. So let's remove this active class from here for now, and let's go to our main.js file, and let's type const sidebar container equals document.querySelector, and for that we have a class of sidebar container. So let's type .sidebar container, and the next thing we need to reference is the details button. So let's type const details button equals document.querySelector, and for that we have a class of details button. So here we can see we have this details button class. So let's type sidebar container details btn. Now let's add an event listener to this details button. So let's type details btn dot add event listener, and we will listen for the click event. And here let's create an arrow function. And now we just need to add and remove the active class from the sidebar container. So let's type sidebar container dot class list dot toggle, and here we will type active. Now what this will do is, if you don't have the class active inside the sidebar container, then it will add the class active, and if you have the class active, then it will remove it. So let's test it out. Let's click on this button, and we can see that the text is displayed over here and everything works alright. Let's click on this button once more, and it is minimized, so everything is working alright. I think we need to add transition for this details button as well. So let's go back and let's go to the details button, and I think we have styled it over here. So here we'll just add a transition of all to 300 milliseconds ease. And now let's click on this button, and we can see that everything works alright. Now the last thing we will do is we will add an animation to this button. So if you go to our original design, we can see we have this animation. So let's add that. So for the details button, I'll create an animation, and we'll name the animation details animation. And we will have the animation for 500 milliseconds, and we will run it for infinite amount of times. and we'll also alternate the animation. So once it goes to the right, it goes back to the left. Right now let's create the animation. So let's type add keyframes, and here for the identifier I'll just type details animation, and for the 0% we will have the default state, and for 100% we will have a transform translate X, and we'll set it to 4 pixels. And now we can see we have this animation for this details button, and if I click on this button, we have some problems over here. The animation for the rotation is also added over here. So for that, let's comment this for now, and we'll go back to the top, and let's see where we have added the rotation animation. So here we can see we have added the rotation animation over here. Now what we will do is we will add the animation to the icon inside the details button. So if we go back to our HTML, we can see that in the details button we have this I tag, and we will add the animation to this I tag. So let's go back over here, and here I'll just type I, and let's also add a transition for that. So I'll just type sidebar container details btn I, and here we'll just type transition, and we'll set it to all 300 milliseconds ease. Right now let's click on this button, and it is working alright. Now let's enable the animation, and now we have the animation, and let's click on this button, and everything works alright. So that's basically it for this video. This is how you design a sidebar from scratch using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So that's it for this video. If you have any doubts, you can ask in the comments below. And if you like this video, please click on the like button and subscribe to this channel to get the latest video updates. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day.